Okay, everybody, welcome to the March 5th, 2026 meeting of the Southborough Historical Commission. I'll note the time as 7:01, and that besides myself, Kevin Miller, also present, we have Annie Pfaff, Michelle Hoganson, and Dan Blanchard. Grant Farrington can't be with us tonight, and Kelly O'Brien, I think, is running late. But we do have a quorum, and we're going to move forward. So the first thing I've got, beside calling us to order, is to talk with you about something that came together very quickly and that I just had to move on while the opportunity was in front of us because it's a very timely kind of thing. Um, and that is a little bit of planning we have I'll just catch you guys up really quickly how this came about. We are sponsoring officially a lecture talk by Ben Haley of the Mass Historical Commission. And I'll pause to note that I don't know, Michelle, if you saw this, but Annie would remember that Ben Haley was the guy from MHC that was very helpful to us in the final stages of the Southborough Center Historic District, the National Register District. And I had a lot of correspondence back and forth with Ben. This goes back to when I had first joined the commission, actually, and was vice chair to Michael. And I was the one dealing with Ben a lot and trying to get the final photos that he needed for the documentation for the district. And so I was running off here and there, mostly to the rural cemetery, as I remember it, filling in some gaps in the documentation for Ben. So I developed a bit of a relationship with him just in the back and forth. And then he's the guy, Annie, remember, actually came and talked about the district to us, and
Yeah,
he did a really nice
it was
presentation.
really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really smart guy, and he was real good about like one of the big takeaways for me personally was just having it reinforced in my mind that, you know, historic doesn't necessarily mean pretty. Uh,
Hmm.
and he talked at length about that kind of stuff. And it was a very good talk. So anyway, he reached out to me and said, listen, he had given a talk, and I'll share real quick and bring this up for you. Um, Dan, you might be familiar with this. At the Dublin seminars last summer, it's an ongoing. You can see it right here. This is their website. Can you guys see that? I
Hmm.
should screen
Yep.
share. You know, it's the Dublin Seminar for New England Folklife, and it's a series, as they say here, of conferences and exhibitions and publications about everyday life, work, and culture of New England's past, and it's associated with a lot of the big museums and antiquarian and historic societies um, in New England. And so he had been on a panel and delivered a paper about Henry Knox um, and the noble train of artillery and so on and so forth. So he reached out to me and he said, you know what, listen, I gave this thing at the Dublin seminar, and he had since delivered it as a talk in a town, it escapes me now, in Western Mass. And he said, you know, I'd be interested in presenting it in Southborough. Are you interested? And I said, you're darn tootin' I am. Let's see what we can work out. And this was all creeping up. I mean, I was thinking about, this is the, um, you know, uh, 250th anniversary of the Knox, noble train of artillery moving through Massachusetts and moving through Southborough. And as this was going on, that stuff with Knox Trail 250 was shaping up. I'll fill you in on that because that also came up really quickly, actually, sort of blindsided me. Um, so I said, in his talk, and I want to share with you the press release I sent out in this regard. Let me see if I can bring this up real quick. Uh, okay. Can you guys see that?
Mm-mm.
You're not seeing it? All right,
No, we're just seeing the Dublin seminar.
the Dublin thing. Let me try to get the correct share. Here we go. Um, so I wrote up a press release. I had to move really quick um, to get this on the board and to make it timely. Um, so, Ben had said to me, I'd like to do this talk in Southborough. If you're not the appropriate person, who should I take it to? And he was, library, this or that. And I said, well, no, look, we'll do it. We want to sponsor it. And the only question is the one of venue, because of course the Knox um, granite marker in Southborough that was placed, by the Knox Commission in 1926. It was actually, I think, dedicated in 27, but the initiative was in 1926. Is in front of the community house, So I was a little bit torn. I said, well, we could have it there, but we also have this brand new Southborough History and Arts Center at Fayetteville Hall, and under the master plan, I mean, we're specifically tasked with doing projects with the Historical Society, and I said, we've written a couple letters in support of grants for the society, and have been, awarded them a house sign to display in the front of the building, which they do, and they're just opened, and it seems to me, and it's also a larger space. Um, Ultimately, you know, I thought if we could work it out with the society. So I had a couple of quick conversations with Michael Wyson at the society. He said, "Yeah, we're happy to host it." And I said, "Well, I think we should take it there." And it was also thinking about the weather, and it wasn't the kind of thing where people are going to go out and stare at that monument on March 15th. Anyway, although it turns out it might be 65 that day. Um, so I we set a date, and you know March 17th is evacuation day. Um, if I unless I've utterly misspoken, let me let me get the date.
That's true.
Yeah, Tuesday,
It's
March.
always, yep,
Yeah, right. It's St. Patrick's
St.
Day.
Patty's Day.
Um, in Massachusetts, it's known as Evacuation Day, right? The 250th anniversary of the British evacuating Boston under the threat of the cannon, the 60 tons of artillery pieces that, General Knox dragged with, horses and oxen from Fort Ticonderoga, down the spine of New York State and through Massachusetts to Dorchester Heights. So, um, some quick cross-referencing revealed that there were no conflicts for March 15th, that 2 days before. So I thought, well, this is perfect. Um, I asked Ben if he could do it. He said yes. I wanted to lock him in super quick before it got away from me. Are you seeing the press release now again on the screen?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so I knocked out a quick press release, and here it is on our wonderful letterhead designed by Annie, and you know that on Sunday, March 15th at 2 p.m. at the new Southborough History and Arts Center at Fayetteville Village Hall. Um, and here's the sort of kind of précis about what the talk is about. Um, that the 1920s Knox Trail Marker Project, you know, spun up a lot of interest about General Knox. But the interesting thing about it, and there was a recent piece in the Globe actually back in December about on this subject, that what the Knox Commission in the 1920s ended up marking was not the exact route of the trail. And I can tell you that as chair of historical over the last, 4 years, I think, I have fielded periodic inquiries from people about this subject. Do you know exactly where the trail went in Southborough? And the answer is no, we don't. And the Knox Commission had worked on this, and their historians still working on it. And in Western Mass, the Globe article was focused on the western part of the state and finding the actual trail. And trust me, it doesn't run along, Route 20, or Route 30. What the commission laid out um, was essentially a new Knox trail that catered to automobiles. And it's a very interesting story about how the way a society and a culture operates dictates how we remember things, you know? Um,
Mhm.
and so Ben's, dug into the archives of the Knox Commission and has a very interesting story to tell about how the trail, as we know it, in the 20s was laid out, um, and some speculation on, where there's some divergence and just that whole sort of story, which I think is a really interesting one. It's sort of an aspect of um, the story of General Knox and how we now remember things. And again, it was, sort of dictated by the era of the automobile. Um, so that's the essence of what he's going to talk about. And I did ask him actually to speak as as much as he can in specific Southborough terms because I've told him that I again periodically field these kinds of questions, and as far as I've been able to tell, there's not a clear answer. Um, so I think it's sort of an interesting aspect of history that he'll be discussing. There's his bio. He um, is the director of the National Register program for the MHC. He also teaches historic preservation at the Mass College of Art and Design. So the details, that's the title of the talk, commemorating Henry Knox and the noble train of artillery in the automobile age. Again, it's a week from Sunday now at 2 p.m. at Fayetteville Hall. It's free. I did set up in an agreement with Michael. They do have a capacity issue. I think there's 60 official seats available. And so it's a ticketed event, but the tickets are free. And people just have to click on the link and reserve them. And I do want to bring this to your attention because here's I got to adjust the share again, if you bear with me 1 second. And just to get so here's the page. This resides on the Fayetteville Hall website. And I did give the link, obviously, in the press release, which has been sent to the Worcester Telegram, the Community Advocate, and to Beth Malo at My Southborough. I haven't heard back from either the Telegram or the Advocate, but Beth Malo has been very supportive. And you might have seen that she ran a Hold the Date piece back at the end of February about this, and she's going to run another piece. She's promised me this coming week, the week going into the thing about it. So this is the page the link that Beth printed already in My Southborough takes you to, and that she's going to print again. And it describes the event. It's lifting the rhetoric largely from the press release I wrote. And then you just click on this thing to get tickets, and you see it's originally started at 60, and we've moved 17 already. So please plan to, come if at all humanly possible and tell your friends, because I think it'll be an interesting event. And by the way, Michael has hustled up the next art installation that's going to be in the long gallery downstairs. This event will be held upstairs in the main hall, and he's going to have the new art installation up by the 15th, so people will get a sort of twofer. Anyone who hasn't been in the hall yet. I know Michelle's been there. Annie, have you been there?
I have. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. So people that haven't, I don't know if Dan, if you've been there yet,
No, not yet.
it's a chance to see if you're back in town by then, a chance to see, some nice art and see the lecture. So anyway, tell your friends,
Mhm.
tell everybody to come to this thing. Um, so it's pretty much a sort of done, arranged deal. And I would have liked to have chatted with you guys about this, but like I said, I had to get this on the docket
Mhm.
before evacuation day. I had to hustle. Um,
So, Kevin, I
yeah.
just wanted to add to this. I don't know if you watch TV, but Secretary of State Frank Galvin has been doing this big advertisement on the Knox Trail and the taking of Dorchester Heights,
Yeah.
and so that coincides very nicely to this.
Yeah, I think that is actually done. Oh, Kelly is here. And let me promote her to panelist. Sorry, Kelly, I just spotted you. And welcome, Sam Stivers. Um, so yeah, I think that's Michelle in connection with the Knox 250 people. That is a big outfit and a big organization doing a lot of stuff. So it's all set up, it's all ready to go. The only thing I wanted to bring to you folks tonight, besides thank you for indulging me, listening to me talk about this for a few minutes, and to bring you up to speed, is, Bennett said to me, well, how did he put it? He's not worried about payment, but he would certainly welcome any kind of honorarium. And I frankly think, given the scope of this, and this guy's got to come, out of Boston and spend a whole Sunday afternoon, that we should, and we have it in the budget. We got plenty of money in our budget. In fact, Annie was worried about us spending anywhere near what we've got. So here's an opportunity to spend some money. And I think an appropriate, I put it to you for your reaction, but I think an appropriate honorarium would be, and a very nominal one would be $150. And I'd like to take a vote to approve that pending your feedback on it. Anybody have a thought on that?
My feedback is that I think it's extremely reasonable. In fact, I would be supportive of a little bit more, actually, depending on what everyone else thinks about that.
I'm sure
Yeah,
Ben is delighted. Go ahead, Dan.
no, yeah, I would agree. I think um, bringing in someone like this, maybe beginning the establishment of something a little bit more permanent, of something more regular, maybe, I think is absolutely, and the ties to the town, it's like the perfect storm of everything all coming together in terms of this serendipitous moment of this author. So, I would say something probably more along the lines of like 200 or 250.
I don't know. It's got music in the background. Is that maybe Kelly? That just came.
Oh, my TV's on. Let me go shut it off.
Okay, thanks.
I just walked in from work, so bear
No
with me. I'm
worries.
sorry.
Thank you. Sorry. It's just like weird.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah.
Well, I would be all for, if you want to go to 200, I don't think that's profligate on our part. I think it, would be a nice gesture.
Dan, actually, the number I originally thought of was 250 as well. So I think that that's within the realm. And, I think from a budget standpoint, I think we're fine with that. And, this is as you said, like a lot of work seems to be going into this. And not just time, but, paying for the expertise. I think it's, you know, definitely appropriate.
Is that your, Michelle, you're nodding. Is that,
Yes, I agree. I think that I don't know what the budget is, but I think $150 not a lot of money, like for all the work and, like you said, the time and transportation.
I'm okay with 250 if that's where you guys want to go. Kelly, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm fine with it.
Um,
I don't know if you guys have been in there, but I went to it was like a Lost in Southborough.
yeah, Michael's thing. I couldn't make that.
Yeah, I went and it was beautifully done.
Yeah.
And it was just so interesting. And I know a lot about historic Southborough, but he brought up some things that I didn't even know about. So
Yeah,
I
good.
appreciated it.
Good. Well, someone wants to make a motion to offer Mr. Haley $250 honorarium.
I just have one other point of discussion before we vote. While I'm like definitely all for this, are we setting a precedent that, anyone that comes to speak, we would support at this level? I do just want to be mindful of that because, while yes, we do have the budget this year, next year, our budget's going down and, at this level it would be 4 speakers and that would be our whole budget. So I do just want to be mindful of like the precedent that that sends and, perhaps other people expecting the same in the future. So just wanted to raise that before we kind of finalize the vote.
I think it's
Well,
I think it's about relevance and expertise,
The expertise.
right?
So
Yeah, and I think also the relevance piece too, right? So something that speaks to the town, and this kind of the unique moment in time in which Southborough, right? There's like so many tie-ins to Southborough, Henry Knox, Revolutionary War, the significant number of men in Southborough who fought during the war, um, and then also Evacuation Day, Tricentennial, 250th anniversary. I think we would need to take it on a case by case basis, right? And I think it's important that the honorarium reflects that this is an invitation coming from us or partnership with us and not the historical society,
mhm,
right? And to really make sure that there is that distinction or difference between these two entities, right?
mhm,
And that this is a partnership with us. But I think, in this instance, I feel 250 is actually very much warranted. But if something comes along and we have someone coming in and that, I think that's a conversation for a different day. I don't think we're setting precedent of saying 250 speaking fee. I think it's more of a I would certainly think that like you would have these conversations later when we start talking about tricentennial, other authors maybe possibly coming in. But I think I think if we can take it by case basis, I feel better about that.
mhm.
Can I just clarify? Because I think I stepped away when you were saying this. This money, this donation, is it going to the historical society or to the person coming in?
no, it's just for the speaker, an honorarium.
Oh, okay,
No,
okay. I thought it was.
yeah, there's no charge by being levied by the society to us for use of the space.
Okay.
And I said to Michael, kind of helped you want getting it set up. He's like, it's there. It's all, he opens the door and people come in kind of thing. And he set up that ticketing page himself. So yeah, this would all go to Ben.
Mhm.
So does everybody, Andy, does that answer? I
Yes.
I
Yeah,
would
thank
say
you.
that Andy,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and it makes sense to me. And that's why I was proposing originally something a little more modest because I did have that concern.
Mhm.
I mean, but I'm more than willing to go with the consensus of the group, obviously. And Dan makes I think a pretty eloquent argument for
Agree.
the
Yeah, thank you,
50.
Dan.
So, any further input on this? Do you guys want to? I mean, if somebody can make a motion on that amount, and then we'll just vote it.
I move that we pay Ben, remind me, what's his last name?
Haley,
Ben Haley a honorarium of $250 for his upcoming talk at the Historical Society.
I second
Second.
that.
okay. So motion made by Annie, seconded by simultaneously by Dan.
I'll give it to Michelle because
Give it to
Michelle's
Michelle.
sick.
Okay, fair enough. To offer Ben Haley $250 honorarium for his talk on March 15th at the Southborough History and Arts Center, Fayetteville Village Hall. Roll call vote. Annie,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Miller's aye, 5-0. Great. Ben will be delighted, I'm sure. I will notify him forthwith. Okay.
Just
So that,
on
so,
a,
sorry.
on a practical manner, um, would you like me to work with the town on getting a check cut for that?
Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. 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 Because it'd be great if we could have it,
Yeah.
give it to them at the time. And so again, block off your calendars next Sunday, the 15th at 2 p.m. and make sure you go in and register for tickets because even we have to do it because it's a head count, control item and get it out to your friends. Now, Michael, in his own inimitable way, is already been promoting this, the kind of his thing, and I think on um, some of those Facebook groups and stuff. But I'm going to worry mostly about, again, I've been in touch with Beth Malo, and she's been quite cooperative and supportive of this. And she'd actually asked me to send her pictures about that Knox Trail 250 thing, which I did. And so I think we're going to get some press, so to speak, in connection with this. That'll be helpful. And, people never make commitments to stuff like this more than a couple days in advance because they don't know what they're doing. So anyway, next item. This is an interesting one. I got a message, and it was actually from someone who lives down the street from me, as it so happens, with regard to, I'm going to share my screen again and try to bring this up. Whoops, sorry. Taking one thing down and trying to put another up. Okay. Where did it go? Sorry, hang on. Oh. Technical issues. Okay. There we go. I got to open this back up. I got can you see the document that I brought up? Just somebody nod if you can see it.
Yep.
Okay. And I can try to make this a little bit larger for you. Up like that, maybe. See if that helps. Okay. So this is a really interesting one. So it was actually a neighbor who, I live inside the National Register District, and as does my neighbor. My neighbor reached out to me and said, "Hey, in my official capacity, sent a message to my town email and said, and Annie, you'd have some interest in this as a realtor, that these like insurance people that come out and, periodically show up and take pictures of your house, what you've been up to when they're watching your rates and all this stuff, was threatening to either jack their rates up or dump them altogether over the fact that their house is in the Southborough Center Historic District. These are people that also have one of our house signs on their home. And believe it or not, this is not the first time I've heard of this. Somebody else I know in town whose house sports one of the historic house signs was similarly threatened at one point by their insurer. And in fact, it's come up in some of the emails that I received from the state that this is actually, and I'm not sure to what degree I'd characterize it or, how widespread it is. But this wasn't the first time I'd heard this story. It's happened in other communities in the state where these sort of, frankly, weasel insurance companies start wanting to mess around with people's rates simply because they have a plaque on their house that says when it was built, or because they sit in a National Register district. And I know there's been chatter in historic circles in Massachusetts, some of this coming from the MHC, about this issue because it is an existential threat in many ways to both National Register districts and even to historic house sign programs. So I knocked out a letter on behalf of, a fellow Southborough citizen. In this case, again, it was full disclosure, it was somebody who lives down the street. Um, and I've redacted the address because the address is irrelevant here. But this is the letter I sent out. The property at blank address in Southborough sits inside the Southborough Center Historic District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places. That designation, however, is purely an honorific and comes with no restrictions whatsoever, because that was the insurer's concern, that they were going to, if there was a catastrophic loss, the historical commission would be lashing some whip, demanding some really, costly, precise to the board kind of rebuild. And I explained, but National Registry designation is purely an honorific. It comes with no restrictions whatsoever regarding preservation or rebuilding. Insurers and other interested parties working in Massachusetts or nationally, this is my little dig, should understand that only local historic district commissions can exercise review over exterior features visible from a public way. While there are some 200 local historic districts in Massachusetts, Southborough currently doesn't have any. So we have no power in this regard whatsoever. I mean, we have the demolition delay bylaw, which is a completely different animal. And then I lifted some verbiage from the MHC's website explaining that listing in the National Register, one, recognizes that the area is important to the history of the community, state, or nation, allows owner of income-producing properties to, or makes them available for certain federal tax incentives for rehabilitation, and provides some limited protection from adverse effects of federal or state-involved projects. If there's none of that involved, nor pertinent local or regional regulations, such as a local historic district, which we don't have in Southborough, then the listing in the National Register doesn't in any way limit an owner's handling of property or convey any obligation to an insurer. And I know that there are over 900 such districts in Massachusetts, and what the whole point of the National Register is simply to promote appreciation of our cultural heritage. And then I just finished with my own verbiage saying, likewise, a homeowner's participation in the Southborough Historical Commission's Historic House Sign Program in no way restricts or otherwise obliges an owner with regard to preservation, rebuilding, or renovation. That program, like the National Register, is intended simply to foster awareness of the town's history and an appreciation of its architectural assets. And so I think I wanted to put this issue out in front of you because, again, I consider it, and I know, Kelly, you got your hand up, I'll get right to you, that I consider it, again, a sort of existential threat, not only to further National Register districts in Southborough, and we have other parts of town that are deserving of that designation, not the least, East Southborough Center, the Fayetteville area, and to our house sign program, because I don't want to be in a situation where, these frankly dingling insurance companies terrify people from accepting a house sign because they think they're going to get hassled. And so I wanted to, rather than just sort of do this sub rosa, send out these letters where needed, I'd rather get out in front of this and be very public about the fact that any insurer that wants to shake some homeowner's tree on this subject is completely out to lunch and out of line. Because, again, neither the house sign program nor National Registry designation obliges you to anything, or an insurance company to anything. And so the last thing I'll say before I go to Kelly and Annie for comment is that I think maybe two things would be helpful here. One, to put a statement like this on our webpage so that people who become interested in the house sign program in particular, because that the National Registry District is a done deal. But for the house sign program, I'd like to have some kind of statement on the website that because I found myself wondering how many people, we're trying to get more interest. We had a big flurry on the house sign program when we reinitiated it. And I sometimes think to myself, well, how many people are quietly going, I don't want one of those things because I'll lose my homeowner's insurance. I wait till they come to my house with that bull. My homeowner's insurance is very good company, but I'm like, you know, um, and furthermore, with some tinkering maybe to this letter, which I knocked off, last Sunday afternoon for my panic-stricken neighbors, I'd like to have a version of this sort of on file that I just dropped in either a boilerplate letter with no address or one that I could easily drop an address in and send off to people. Because um, I will say that the recipient of this particular letter was quite pleased with it, and felt that this was going to quiet their insurance company's barking, you know. So I'd like to have something like this ready, but I wanted to put this out to you because, so Annie, you've got one of the house signs. I don't know if you ever heard from your insurer on this, but
I haven't heard from my insurer on that, but we actually were dropped from our insurance for other reasons that has been a complete nightmare for several years. So, but that's a story for another day.
oh gosh.
Um, I just wanted to comment, on, putting on my realtor hat for a moment. I'm actually listing a home in town right now that has a historic house sign program, and I have to tell you, every single person through the door is questioning, well, what is the sign? What does it mean? Are there restrictions? Because it varies, so much town to town. I mean, the National Register, shouldn't. But there are some towns in our area that do have very strict restrictions on, things in a historic district.
Right.
So in the particular house I'm selling is not in the historic district, it just has a house sign. But the regular consumer, especially ones that aren't already in Southborough, have no idea what that means. Um, so, I mean, this is a tangent and not really related to the insurance piece, but I also think there might be a benefit of just having a little write up that you can give to, homeowners and or their realtors, about, what the implication of that sign does or doesn't mean, along, some of the same lines you've included here in this letter. So just throwing that out there. I think this is wonderful, and thank you very much for taking the time to write this all up because it's important. The insurance industry right now is crazy and they're looking for any reason to drop people. So this is a really good effort to do what we can to prevent that.
Right. And I thought, this is something again that I want to get out in front of because it is a ridiculous objection. I mean, it's so clear. And I think once you explain it in both cases that I'm aware of, the threat evaporated as soon as they understood that because they have in Southborough, we don't have local historic districts, and therefore we don't have a local historic district commission dictating anything to anybody. So wear your house side with pride. If you happen to be in the National Register district, wear that with pride too, and don't worry at all. So I think having verbiage on the website, and yeah, when we give the signs out, you know how we have that letter that goes out with it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we have to either revise it or add to it, or this on the backside it says, "Hey, don't worry, be happy because
Right, right.
it can't do nothing to you just because you have this thing." So anyway, Kelly, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. So a couple questions. Do you have the letter that your neighbor actually received that we could look up?
I
Obviously.
don't. I
Okay.
don't. No, they just, said to me, "Gosh, our insurer," and they knew actually. This neighbor happens to be very well informed,
Mhm.
and actually sat in on Ben Helly's talk about the National Register District, and so she knew it was basically BS, um, but wanted a document to reassure, to prove it, basically. So I was happy to write it. But like I said, yeah, we got to, this is one, and I said when I answered in my reply, I said, well, here's this letter. I think it'll do the trick for you. And just so you know, this is an emergent problem in other communities in the state. And I think the MHC and local historical commissions need to do a better job of nipping this one in the bud because it could really, undermine us.
My second thing is in the first paragraph, this designation, however, is purely honorific and comes with no restrictions whatsoever regarding the preservation of rebuilding, insurers, and other interested parties working in Massachusetts. I don't know if that no restrictions needs to be reworded because with the demolition bylaw, that is a restriction.
Yeah, but
That's
that's
what I
not,
feel anyway.
yeah, well, with regard to demolition, but it is not anything that is connected whatsoever to the house sign program or the National Register. In other words,
This is
you
true.
know, the demolition delay bylaw was a separate, town ordinance, passed at a town meeting, that is addressing, demolition of the structure. But whether or not you're in a historic district and whether or not you have a historic house sign, if your house is built prior to 1925, you're subject to the demolition delay bylaw. So one doesn't have anything to do with the other. Um, and I think the misunderstanding comes from the fact that, there are 200 local historic districts in Massachusetts. Concord has one. I think Northborough has a local historic district. I have to verify that, but and there, I when I lived in Virginia, there was a local historic district, and they were quite strict. The area I lived, you could only have wooden windows and you know things like that. But we don't. Southborough does not manage that in any way, shape, or form. So I just want to get clear on the messaging. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, no, I think part of the issue is that there are communities nearby with very strict codes for historic preservation, right? So ranging from, you look at like think about like Beacon Hill, right? Or even Concord, right? Like very, very strict, um, right? Where any alterations to anything outside of the house, right,
Yeah.
has to be vetted, right? I think about, and growing up in Portsmouth, that was very much true in Portsmouth downtown, right?
Right.
Where if you were a business in the historic district, or if you were, lived in the historic district, and Portsmouth had several of them, any kind of changes, right? And granted, they had different types of, right? But construction in those places were very tightly regulated. And one of the reasons why, Portsmouth, New Hampshire is, the downtown is full of all of these brick buildings and things like that is because of very standardized design that is mandated by, right? And so I don't think it's, as much as I would like to bash the insurance companies, I also think that there's probably when you're no longer dealing with local insurance companies, right? You're now dealing with insurance companies that are nationwide, right? So I think for our purposes, I think you're right to make it clear, right, that this is for Southborough. But I do agree that there are some stipulations to, we've certainly, right, had, demolition, right, bylaw, right? We've had, so it's not no, I do think there are some restrictions that we need to be clear about.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy like to work a statement that mentioned the demolition delay bylaw, for instance, but I would just make it very clear that doesn't have anything to do with insurance or the impact of a loss or anything else. And it seems to what I've been hearing, um, again, both in town and anecdotally in some of the emails that I see of activity around the state, that these are often prompted by the people that the kind of independent assessors that are hired by insurance companies to go by and check things out, and take pictures and all that kind of stuff. Spotting a house sign mostly, and thinking that suddenly there's some, we would be demanding copper gutters on a replacement. You know what I mean? Or if the windows
Well,
are wood, we'd be demanding specific wood, that kind of stuff. And again, in Southborough, we don't have that authority. So go ahead, Michelle. I think
so Kevin, I feel that we just need to educate the insurance companies because
right.
this is not a local historic district. This is a national, and these are the guidelines for each.
Right. Yeah. So
They,
what
they
I
need
would,
to,
yeah. So, I mean, what I'm proposing is I think I need to kind of refine this letter a little bit. And I'm happy to, if bring back to the next meeting, if you want to see one that at least acknowledges, yeah, there's a demolition delay bylaw in here that doesn't have anything to do with the insurance rates either. I can mention it. And then I'd like to work up some language for your approval that would go on our website. And I think it needs to go, um, we have some cleanup to do there anyway, with some discussion of the National Register District and what that means and what it doesn't. And it's particularly with regard to the historic house sign program, because Annie, I know the house you're talking about. I remember delivering the sign to them. And uh, it doesn't surprise me that people are walking into the home to view it, and asking, well, what does that mean? Does that mean I can't, Um, and so, yeah, I think it would be good to educate sort of everybody, and to allay their fears. And I don't think this is going to be a hard thing for us to do, actually. But again, we should definitely do it. Um, Go ahead, Dan. I think you're.
I think Kelly was before
Oh,
me.
sorry. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Dan. um, if we're going to bring this to the next meeting, is there any way we can look at the letter that was sent with all their information voided out? So we can
Oh,
just
you mean from I can ask if they'd be willing to share, and I'd say I'd redact anything remotely personal just to see the way you want to see an example of the kind of letter
yeah,
insurance company
I want to
sent.
see what's received and make sure our rebuttal is as strong as possible.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I'll ask. And again, with the assurance that there's not going to be any personal information revealed, whatsoever. But that's a fair question. I'd make note and I will ask. Um, Kelly wants letter. All right, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree that it needs to be on our website. I literally just pulled this up from the town of Natick, which is 20 minutes away from us. Owners of properties in the historic district benefit from the assurance that the distinctive character of their neighborhood will not be destroyed by incompatible development. In exchange, property owners are legally restricted from altering the exterior appearance of their building or grounds without the approval of the Historic District Commission, which
Right.
reviews each proposed change to ensure that it is compatible with the existing character of the district.
Right. So
Right.
now we know that Natick has at least one local historic district, right?
Right. And so like if people are house hunting, right, it makes sense that if that's they're being told in Natick, they're probably looking at houses in Southborough. And then so if that's what they're being told in Natick, what are they being told in Southborough? And it's they have the three acts of what they have the three things of what they want. Right, preserve and protect the distinctive characteristics of buildings and places significant in the history of the Commonwealth and its cities and towns to maintain. But so they're citing 40C of Massachusetts General Laws, the Historic District Act.
Mhm.
Right. And so this act establishes the three objectives: to preserve and protect, to maintain the improved settings of those buildings and places, and to encourage new designs compatible with existing buildings in the district. Right. So you also now have them citing Massachusetts law in terms of right. And so I think yes, we need to have something, but I think we also need to be very clear and articulate, so that everyone has access to it when they're looking at Southborough for residency.
Yeah, no, excellent points all around. I agree. Michelle.
Just one point. I actually have some information what the difference is. You know, what is the difference between a local historic and a national registry? So I think if we just had something like that to hand to the insurance company or to, a prospective buyer, just, to ease all of their anxiety because it's really, I still feel education.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, this will be a good one. I'm glad I brought this up, and in a way, I'm glad it came up now because I think, and I put in the agenda item. I think that I listed this as messaging regarding National Register District and the Historic House Sign Program with regard to insurance companies and plans to advance the House Sign Initiative because I'd like to make a little lemonade out of a lemon in a way and work. I'll spend a little more time I'll try to get that letter that Kelly would like to see. I think that could be valuable. Maybe refine some of this language, bring to you guys next time a draft, a refined version of this letter, but also something for the website. And then I could see possibly, even again asking like my Southborough to sort of raise this point, or I send a letter to the blog and say, listen,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking for more house sign applicants. This is a wonderful program. People love the signs. They display them with pride. And furthermore, let me add to you that, that there's actually nothing that is going to encumber you in any way or cause, and it really is just a matter of education. And Dan's point about the fact that I do think, Dan, what you're saying that these national companies, they ought to be, which is what my slightly snarky line in that opening paragraph was suggesting, that if you're going to work in a community, you ought to know what the local regulations are. But I think you're quite right that in many cases, national insurers simply just want to assume, without bothering to do the due diligence. So I basically had to do it for them in this case. And so we'll get this straightened out.
I do, I do think it's becoming more popular, that towns are adopting very strict language about, I mean, I just pulled up Northborough and it says Historic District Commission reviews any exterior changes that are proposed for houses located within the town's historic districts.
Right.
Right. I think this is becoming, right, as a way to combat a lot of issues with urbanization, right? So like, how do you retain the quality of the town while also balancing out population growth, right? And so I'm actually frankly now curious to see what are the communities surrounding us that have historic districts with very tightly regulated rules related to owning a house.
Right. Those are all local. They're not national.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, local historic districts. And those are the only ones that can exercise the kind of control that the insurance companies are
Yep.
working. Dan, I would love to have you research that and come back and tell us about it a little bit. Because,
Okay.
Frankly, look, I think I personally would love to see some local historic districts in Southborough, but I don't imagine it happening in my lifetime. From
We've been there.
what I've discovered about the
Yeah.
sentiment in Southborough in the half dozen years I've been here. But see what you can find out. All right, let's go on.
Yep.
And thank you for that conversation. Chair's report, I'm going to be very brief about this. It's funny. We were honored at this Knox Trail 250 celebration in Framingham on February 8th. That was Super Bowl Sunday, and it was cold as hell. Um, but it was actually a great event where they had fife and drum people, the reenactors. They had these Clydesdales that were pulling like replica sleds with the replica cannon on them, and they came marching down the street. This is the Framingham Common. And then there was um, it was shocking to me. You wouldn't believe this. There were a lot of people at this event. Um, and, they were honoring for the towns to which Knox passed, Southborough, Marlborough, Framingham, and Wayland. Um, and these are celebrations that have moved from west to east, in the period now leading up to Evacuation Day. So anyway, and this all unfolded very quickly too, and you might be amused to hear how this happened was typical of what goes on all the time. I feel like I'm constantly fighting this somewhat of a rearguard action since I became chair of the commission to educate everybody about the difference between the Historical Commission and the Historical Society. Well, this was an official town acknowledgement. They wanted the Historical Commission, but apparently the Knox 250 people or their PR firm sent the communications to the Historical Society, meaning Michael Wyson, who just kind of flaked or didn't pass them on. I didn't hear about it. And then suddenly, Kate Donahue, our state rep, had reached out to the chair of the select board, Mr. Dennington, and said, how come nobody's answering from Southborough? And Andrew reached out to me and I said, well, because I haven't gotten the communications. And so once we got that squared away, they asked me if I could go to this thing on February 8th. Again, it was very short notice. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll go. And I went. And like I said, it was a wonderfully produced celebration. And there were a lot of state reps there and, various officials from towns and mayor of Framingham and all this kind of stuff. And Kate Donahue was there. And it was a really interesting, well-produced kind of presentation. They showed a little film and then they gave out all these plaques. And so I got ours. Here it is for the town of Southborough. And I'd like to get this at some point very soon into the hands of Mr. Purple and try to convince him to hang it in the townhouse. They also gave me there's some kind of citation from the governor and the lieutenant governor with their signatures on it, acknowledging Southborough confer upon you this governor's citation in recognition of the semi-quincentennial anniversary of Henry Knox's journey through New York and Massachusetts, known as a noble train of artillery. We honor you for your role in this endeavor as one of the many acts of service and sacrifice in the cause of independence. It's a lovely little citation, and I would like to get this framed with a tiny amount of our remaining budget, Annie. We'll just get a frame, and I'd like to get both of those things hung up in the townhouse. So wonderful event, huge turnout. And I couldn't believe that all those people who came out to see the reenactors and stuff, and they fired off the cannons and all that stuff, actually came into this hall and sat through a program that was like an hour and a half. And nobody left. I was so shocked, and then I had to get up and talk. And I was like, oh, wow. I was prepared, kind of, sort of, and I pulled it off all right. But I thought I'm going to be talking to like 10 people. And instead it was like 100. It was a lot of people. So it was pretty awesome. Second, meetings progress with regard to the town common fencing project. Of course, as you know, we are the co-sponsors of this. This was a CPC initiative. $100,000 was awarded about a year ago now for this fencing project. And boy, has it been a slog because VHB, which is the company that worked frequently with the town on these kinds of projects was hired to do, prepare the bidding documents and all that stuff. And they came back and said, quite frankly, that they see it costing quite a bit more than the $100,000 we asked for. Which just blows my mind. But then again, I'm the one that wanted to give Ben Haley $150, and you guys convinced me to up it to 250. Well, so as a consequence of this, I've had several meetings now with Bill Cundiff, the DPW superintendent, Caitlin Cervello, the engineer that works for DPW, and Michael Clutchman and Greg Russell of VHB, in an attempt to wrest some kind of fiscal sanity back into this project, because there's going to be no appetite, in my view. I don't have the appetite for it to go back to the town meeting and ask for more money. And so let's just suffice it to say that we're working on several angles, one of which, Assabet Valley has the regional, Volk School has a wonderful metal working program. And as you know, they did stellar work, the Assabet Valley students, on the expansion of the senior center at Corderville Hall, and everybody seems to be well pleased with the results of that. And I'm pushing hard for their involvement in this project, which is, after all, a marquee project in the center of town and essential, in my mind, to the tricentennial efforts. So there's that. There's also, without boring you with the details, an effort underway. I'm pushing hard on this as well to recover some funds that, the Main Street Sidewalk project in 2019, it extended into 2020, had an impact on that fence, and not in a good way, particularly at the western corner. And we have, that's the part where Common Street, right in front of the townhouse, comes back down into Main Street. And we have ample documentation for a claim to MassDOT and the contractor for some help in that regard. That's number two. And then there's been some pretty extended discussion about the iron pipe that's involved in that fencing, whether it would be best to replace some of that, because it's very common gauge black pipe that still make the exact same stuff, or whether to rehab it in the field. So there's been a lot of time and a lot of effort, and there will be more coming up. I just was replying to some emails with regard to this earlier this evening. So I hope we can get this there and get this. Everything is nuts. You know what, town meeting we just approved for a roof. I mean, it seems like, I thought they sent men to the moon for less money, but that's what things cost these days. So it's going to be work, and all I can tell you is that I'm trying to get this under control. The other part of this is the Rural Cemetery Water Tower project update. Again, just to quickly bring you back up to speed, we had it go in one direction. I had a previous meeting told you that I had an idea, and that there's some interest in a nationally known architectural firm on this. There's also interest, as it turns out, among some of the select board and from our DPW commissioner. And it's all been delayed. Everybody's eye has been on, besides snow clearing and snowstorms, has been on, of course, on all this school stuff. And now that that's passed for the moment, I hope I can bring attention back around to which way that tower project ought to go. I just want it restored. The select board did vote to award us the $5,000 for the necessary study for just restoration. But since there's a larger possibility here, and there's interest in it, I presented it to the people concerned and said simply, look, I think it's a good idea. If you don't, just tell me, and we'll go back to where we were. And that's not the answer I was getting. I was getting the answer of, yeah, that's kind of interesting. So let's see. So again, this is another thing that's hanging fire, and the town accountant wants me to spend the 5,000 if we're going to spend it. And I said, well, it's a little bit in abeyance right now while I try to get a sense of if there really is the will to move forward. What I'm talking about, of course, is the columbarium notion, and whether that's a viable option or not. And so we'll see. That's all I can tell you right now is that um, it's a matter of, and it's also been greatly complicated by the miserable weather we've had, where you can't even get somebody out to look at the stuff because it's all, piled up with snow. Um, but hopefully there'll be some progress on that as well. Michelle, is there anything going out of members' report on Tricentennial that we should
Oh,
know about?
there's so much going on at Tricentennial, Kevin. You know, there's like 7 committees, and there's the house tour, the parade, there's drone show, there's cemetery reenactment, historical interviews, there's a bunch of new items, the new items with St. Mark's School collaboration, Bay School collaboration. I mean, the list goes on, and we are in the process of publishing a calendar. And so there's there's a lot of stuff. I mean, your head is going to be spinning.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Music festival, it's going to, instead of having a separate music festival, they're going to supersize summer nights. So they're working with the Recreation Commission. Um, there's lots of other talks of different things too. It's really moving along.
Well, when do you next meet with Tricentennial?
The 11th.
March 11th.
Hmm.
Well, please encourage them to come to the Knox event on the 15th,
Hmm.
because
Okay.
this
Yeah.
is right up, this is Tricentennial type.
As a matter of fact, they're thinking of doing, and don't quote me on the details of this, but I know that they were looking to get an ox
Oh,
for the parade.
oh, really? Oh, wow.
And because I guess that's what actually pulled the cannon and not Clydesdales.
But oxen and horses, they did use horses as well.
Uh,
And it's funny, at this event back on Super Bowl Sunday, I saw the Clydesdale coming up the street. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, the poor horses, they're pulling this. Oh, it was on wheels.
Yeah.
It was
So
on asphalt. In other words, the Clydesdales really weren't being asked to work that hard, but
So
hopefully.
it's going to come down to money. So do you want some guy with stilts in the parade, or do you want an oxen, dragging a cannon?
Well, just as long as I'm not appointed to sweep up after the oxen coming down the street, or the Clydesdales for that matter.
I have to say, Kevin, I'm going to sign off if that's okay. You still have a quorum here.
Yeah, okay. I hope you feel
And
better.
all right, thank you. We'll
Okay.
talk
Bye,
soon.
Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle.
Bye-bye.
Well, actually, we're in the home stretch, really in the home stretch, because all we've got now is minutes. Um, I have Grant sent out the November minutes. We're way behind and getting scolding notes from the clerk's office, as we well deserve. And I've been through those November minutes myself, and that is the amended version that Grant sent out to you. I believe he did it um, yesterday. So I'm gonna bring that up and see if, because Grant's not here, of course, if there's anybody has any um, notes or comments or emendations to make on these November 5th minutes, or if you were all happy with them. Again, I've been through this, and this reflects my edit, is the revised minutes that he sent out. Anybody have comments or thoughts in this? And I know that Kelly, you weren't present for this meeting, so
Yeah, I'll recluse myself, but
you can.
I'm not getting any because I'm having so many problems with my work. I mean, Southborough email, I haven't even seen any of these minutes.
Oh, well, listen, I will follow up again because I've asked about this to the appropriate parties, and I'm gonna make sure that this gets fixed to you.
I
I'm
ended up doing
sorry.
a records request, like sending a public records request, and they said it's fine, but I keep trying. So I don't
Yeah.
know. You
Well,
know, I know they're
I
late
will.
Thursday, so maybe I'll go there next Thursday and talk to Hassan or Jay.
Yeah, I will follow up as well on your behalf because I want to get that straightened out. So Dan or Annie, anything on these November 5th minutes? Are you prepared to vote if we bring this up? So I'll just make the motion to approve the minutes of November 5th, 2025 as shown and as amended.
Second.
Okay, thanks, Annie. So motion made and seconded. Roll call vote. Annie,
Yes.
Dan, got it.
Dan, you're on mute.
I think Dan froze a second. There we go.
Yes.
He wasn't moving. I was like, what?
I think you had a glitch. Kelly.
I have to recluse myself.
Okay, so we'll mark that as an abstention, and Miller is aye. So it's 3-0-1. Minutes are passed for November. Now the other one is. Oh wait, that was November. What did I just do? There we go. There's November twice. What happened to there's the January minutes. So, yeah, hang on one second. That meeting was not November. This is the meeting of January 5th.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought we already did November.
Yeah, this is Grant goofed up. There it is. I just fixed it. It's January 5th. And otherwise, I've been through, well, you can see my edits. I edited this earlier. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about this. Either trust my edits and want to vote, or I can ask Grant to post these as draft minutes and we can hold.
Just so you know, this says, well, you said it's November 2025, but approved March 5th,
No, this is
2025 on
the one I
top.
got up now. Can you see it? This is January 5th.
No, it says November 5th.
Okay, I gotta reshare. They've messed around a little bit.
And at the top of the screen, it says approved March 5th, 2025.
It was
So that's supposed to be 2026.
Yep. That's that. So let me bring up the other one.
but
Sorry.
don't forget to hit save.
Yep. And then let me try this again. Sorry for the. Okay, that's November 5th. There's January 5th. I have to reshare. Sorry for the little bit of kerfuffle here. Okay. Let me bring this over. All right. There you've got January 5th. Can you see that all right, folks? Yeah, you should be able to. And like I said, I went through this and did my edits. It's just a matter of he had a couple things, a couple typos, a couple misspellings, and then one section here that I just shortened a little bit because the rhetoric was a little bit repetitive. Otherwise, it was just typos and capitalizing Community Preservation Committee and stuff like that. But did you guys get a chance to look at this?
This is what Grant just said, like
Yeah. He sent this like today or no, last night. I'm sorry. I saw it this afternoon.
I don't think I had a chance to look at those yet.
All right. Why don't I we've already approved November 5th, which gets us a little bit closer to the mark. These January 5th minutes, I can ask Grant to post this draft. Does that work for you, Annie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. So I'll have Grant post these as draft minutes, and we'll get at least more or less right with the clerk's office.
It says January 5th, 2025. I'm
Yeah.
just noticing it. It's just
Yeah. Thank you for that.
and approved March 5th on the top again.
Yeah, that'll have to go out because
Yeah.
it'll have to be, I'm just gonna pull that and save those for Grant, and hopefully we can get that straightened out. Now, then the only other thing is, given that we're two folks short, maybe we'll try to schedule another meeting. It won't be till April. But I'll send out a poll rather than try to do it now, because then we'll get all agreed, and then Michelle and Grant will have something that won't work for them. So we'll hold on that. Any other business? There really it is none. The only thing that's hanging for me and driving me absolutely nuts is trying to get that unmarked Revolutionary War soldiers thing, and there have been some snags in that, but that we'll save for another night. Is there any public comment? We only have Sam here. Thank you, Sam, for being here. We're not playing to an utterly empty room. And seeing no public comment, we can move to a motion to adjourn. I'll take that as yours, Dan.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Seconded by Annie. Roll call vote. Annie,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Miller's aye. 4-0. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. I'll be in
Good night,
touch.
everyone.
I'll be in touch
Thank
with
you.
the poll,
Nice to see
All right.
you guys. Good night.
friends.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.